Hi, I'm Billy. I run Open Books, a poem emporium, and we are absolutely delighted to be partnering with Amber to celebrate their incredible new collection and all of the amazing artists that they're having on this tour, virtual tour that they're offering in anticipation of what we're excited about for their in-person event here at the store sometime in the fall. A little background on Open Books. We've been in business for more than 30 years and recently moved to Pioneer Square from our first home in Wallingford. We love in-store visits, we love online customers, and we're happy to see you whenever you come. You can find us online at openpoetrybooks.com or come say hi.
Welcome to this virtual series to celebrate my bestie, Amber Flame, and her new book, Apocrypha. Apocrypha is a love story to conjure up queer, non-gendered joy of biblical proportions with a lot of research and acrobatic wordplay. Today, Flame has brought the first person she witnessed using poetry and words as magical manifestation, Rachel McKibbens, to discuss what it means to conjure up. Rachel makes and does many things, mostly recently in poetry collection Blood from Copper Canyon Press, and We Were Three for the podcast Serial produced by This American Life. Let's welcome Amber Flame and Rachel McKibbens for this next hour of joy and manifestation.
Thank you so much, Roma. And thank you, Rachel, for joining.
It froze. I'm worried.
Can you hear me? Oh,
yes, I can hear you now.
And we're back. It looks like my internet is weak. Connection unstable. Let's hope that gets better.
Well, aren't we all a little unstable?
It's not surprising that technology is trying to fuck me over once again. We'll see. Let's see how it does. How are you doing?
I'm hanging in there. Sort of recovering from the last 20 years of my life. But other than that,
in recovery, it turns out. Yeah. I recently described my personal well-being. I was like, well, lately it feels like I wake up in the morning and I begin the arduous 16-hour process of getting ready for bed again.
Yes.
It ends up being 18 or 20 hours later and I'm exhausted all the time.
I hear you. I feel you. I hear you. All of it.
But I'm trying to like all the Channy horoscopes and everything are like, where's your pleasure? Where's your joy? Where are you finding delight? And I'm like, bitch.
I know it's hard to I find delight in vengeance a lot of times with my writing. And
Indeed.
So I don't have therapeutic joy speech all the time, so I feel you.
This is like that is, I think, honestly, why you scared me when I was a baby. Oh, you got attacked by a bug?
There's this never-ending, this perpetual fly that's like aware of all of my dirty thoughts.
Yeah, come zooming right on in. Come
lands on my face. I'm just gonna let it sit there. I think that's pretty punk rock. How old were you when you first? What year was this?
That would have been, let's see, 2013, 2012, something like that. Yeah. So you were definitely like, you were already you know.
I'd already been causing damage, right?
For quite some time, indeed. And I think I saw you, and this is what I said to you before we got on the stream, is I grew up in the church. I very much know what it means to like cast out spirits, invoke spirits. And I knew what you were doing. Like I knew immediately. And I was like, I don't know if everybody here is aware of what they are like really signing up for here, which is, I think, a warning that should like maybe precede you everywhere you go a little bit.
Speaking of which, I just killed that fucker.
Of course he did.
And I made contact with you the entire time.
You did.
Well, that's interesting too that you say it was in that year, because that was a time when I had been in the game of slam for a decade at that point. and all of its mysticism, all of the theater had sort of eroded. And I became fully aware of just how aggressively human poets actually are. I don't know what it was about that year, but I think because also, it was when social media started really ramping and people started using it as a platform to elevate their voices that would ordinarily not be even considered, right? As part of any dialogue. And so, like, crucial dialogue. So it became that was the time where I started really getting worried about the state of poetry, and in particular the vulnerabilities. I could just see them all within, like, slam, the way we, like, would just spend the night at people's houses, people we barely knew,
right,
tour, get in our car, barely have enough money for gas, and get around. Just wasn't a sustainable model. And but also, I don't have an MFA. I could never went to college, never studied poetry whatsoever. So I wasn't really sure what to do. But I think 2 years before that, I had started Pink Door, right? This writing retreat. And it was around that time, too, when it became exclusively for non-men writers of color, for reasons. And yeah, so I think that when you came across my work, I was at the brink of being finally the most fed up, if you will, which I think is when when any person becomes the most dangerous, right? When the facade is deemed unnecessary, and you start recognizing that, like, no, I'm here to just hex. Fuck this healing journey thing that they're all wanting me to do on stage. Like, I'm going to name things that need to be corrected.
Name names, actually, too.
Yeah. Whew.
Yeah. I think what I love, though, is that what you said earlier, what I loved about you immediately and could see is that you were intentional. I knew that you knew what you were doing. So it didn't feel like you were just, sort of just spraying magic powers everywhere and not knowing what you were wielding. You were doing it very intentionally. But more than that, you were, like, willing. A couple years later, it was like, what, maybe 2 or 3 years later, I went to Pink Door.
Yeah.
And that's when you showed me as, like, one of your gifts that you give people at the Pink Door is a really deeply internal and human look at you and your life. And and so you were human. Like, you were like, I've fucked up. This is where I fucked it. Like, I will name myself first. Like, I absolutely, and that accountability, I think, is, like, super, it's important when you're powerful. And you never denied that you were powerful. I like that. Like, the ones who are like, oh, I don't know, no, nobody knows that. You're like, I know who the fuck I am. And I know what the fuck I'm here to do. So yeah.
It's so dangerous to not know.
Yes.
It's so dangerous, like, and I think that's
especially
what
in that
our writing, right? Like, when you're writing anything, you should just have an awareness of how dangerous any word can be, any combination, any sentence, any line, any image has potential to be weaponized in some way. And how do you want that wielded? How do you expect that to like, is it going to do harm, right? Because like the old motto, like, do no harm but take no shit.
Yeah.
And I've done my best to practice that at all times. And I think that I've gotten it wrong a few times, but for the most part, I don't set out to harm anyone, but I absolutely don't take shit. And with Pink Door especially, I think that it was just really important that folks understood the importance of stillness and self-interrogation, and even more so just how to get so completely feral that you just return to yourself, really, is what it is. I think that what a lot of folks first expect is that it's going to be this, like, intensive writing retreat where we're all sitting around this huge, like, table, and we're just skewering each other. And what it actually is recess. It's and how adults don't get that. And if you're going to do any actual true, like the ritual of writing is so important, and as is rest. You can't cast without first being completely rested. And just to be fully present in your body in every way. Like every inch of yourself has to be filled by you, not by politics, not by, you know, any social expectations. It has to be you inside of yourself. And how often do you get to be that? Like, it's actually not very common for us to be fully just actualized. We're constantly grieving or rushing, right? We're just doing some parenting, even like there's something that we're doing that doesn't allow for us to make enough space to just sort of melt, just to like ooze out and then suddenly like reform.
A quick little rebirth. It's like
Absolutely.
a dip in the lake of Minnetonka kind of thing, you know, like all of a sudden you're
just like, when do you get to sit around and masturbate?
right.
That's so fucking important. It just is. And people like, you know, they laugh, they're like, oh my God, you know, like I said this in front of high schoolers, like, I thought it was really important, you know, and, you know, I'm sex positive as all fuck. I had a fucking kid at 17 because of the sex negativity in my life. Right. Like, and I think that masturbation is such an important tool for writing, for creating, and just for steadying the body, and just like to really like get back into who we are and where we come from. Like, it's such a primal, intimate act, as is our writing, hopefully. And so I think they both should obviously be, you know, in correspondence in some way.
They should be talking, perhaps. That would help, you know.
You know, like manifest in that way. Like, I'm literally like gonna coax myself out of, you know, hiding. Which probably isn't what you were intending to talk about right now, but
I am down. Like, this is a love story, man. It's all about what you coaxing, right?
Which I love that. And I'm so excited about, you know, you and this thing that you've created, right? That's going to hopefully peel back layers and allow us to be fully fucking vulnerable and bloody with ourselves and with how we love. Because, you know, it's truly romantic, and fangs can be romantic too. Like, it's important.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I think that like
soft and sweet, like,
the biggest surprise, maybe, I think, is how much the conversation talks about power in relationships.
Absolutely.
Talks about power and loving and in the roles that we take. That comes up over and over again. And I was like, I was unprepared for how much people wanted to talk about that and wanted to talk about how uncomfortable it was to negotiate that space with somebody else, especially. But before we go there, I would really love to know, when was like the first time you became aware of, like, I was going to talk about the calling, like, you obviously, what you say, I'm just here to hex, fuck that healing journey. So when did you know that this is your calling? When did you know that you had this power? What was your first hex?
That's a good question. And it took a long time, and it wasn't until I was 25, and I'm 47 now. And I think that that's a fine age to be aware, but even then it was more of me thinking that's just got to be coincidence. But when someone harmed my child, and I wished her to fall off her horse, and she did. And she broke her back, and now she's in her 70s, addicted to painkillers. And it's just this long extended sort of like Russian nesting doll of of pain for her. And which isn't to say that like I created all of that and everything, but like I started noticing that when because I would hold everything in, and I would only really speak through my writing. And when I would hold in my anger and just like take it and take shit and swallow shit constantly, I would just think bad thoughts on folks, and then I would watch them materialize in some way. And I was like, shit. And then I came across Krista fucking Bell, right? Who is such a magnificent force in the world. Amazing witch out of Seattle. And she had this great poem where she talked about stirring We stir our menstrual cycles
so
into barbecue
menstrual
sauce.
fluid into barbecues.
And
I will gather your pubic hairs under the new moon and bottle them in my piss.
And I was like, you're out here saying this on stage. You're telling everyone your shit. Like, I was like, because me, I thought it was far more important. I mean, I'm, covert, and also like, Chicana culture, Chicana culture requires you to not snitch or snitch on yourself. So I just came from a very particular, like, like Mexican street gang culture and all that shit. So like, even if you're out here doing terrible things, you don't put it on Front Street. Like, that's just like how it was. And then she's out here naming what the fuck she's gonna do if you fuck, and so I was like, huh. And it was really through Krista, and I'd say a lot of other Black femmes within the poetry community, including Sonia Renee, very much so, Era D. Matthews. These were folks who were really intentional in a way and just did not say anything extra, right? Economical as fuck with their language, and so giving too with their poetry. But off stage, they were, just so, I'd almost say like so clinically precise in what they did and how they spoke with folks and how they called folks in. And I really learned just from them. And so it wasn't until I think after the divorce, in, let's see, it was like 4 years after, 2000, like it was like 2006. I was going through a divorce, and I had no financial support whatsoever, and I didn't really have much for community because I came from California to New York into his community. And so I didn't feel very held. I ended up being wrong in some regards, but because I was orphaned and I've been an orphan all my life, I think that I'm always ready to just sort of like, even in chosen family feels more like foster, like temporary. It's taken me this long. It's taken me like 42 years to finally understand that like the folks who love me, love me, are going to always love me. Right. And that was a real tough nut to crack for myself. But yeah, so like I first got a glimpse like, oh, I think that I like manifest, or I do a thing. But then it became where folks came to me asking specifically for help in situations. Can you do this? And I was like, no, I'm not practiced. I'm not studied in any way at the time, but I would just sit and like think on it, and that shit would work out for them. So I was like, oh, I'm not messing around. Like, this is important. And I recognized too that my writing very much had to be reflective of that, and that like, I would never write something I didn't want to happen.
Right.
I would never do that.
Yes.
Absolutely not.
There are like things like there have been dreams about things happening to my child that I'm not even going to talk about. Right. Like, cause I'm like, nope, that will not be a poem. Yeah. I will not write about the fears of that. Because
keep it a ghost. Like, you cannot let it have a name. You cannot give it a language. 100%. You cannot allow it.
That's the doorway in. Yes, absolutely. Yes.
If you think of like too, like magic mushrooms, I don't know, maybe we haven't done them, but I have.
I mean, I have, but
and I know like how much that opens your brain up, right? Like all of the limitations, social limitations, religious shame limitations, everything goes away and everything has access to you and vice versa. So it's like, I have to be very, very fucking clear and intentional and sure that I'm going to walk into a room and rest and allow my brain to get willy-nilly. And I cannot invite anything or even worry about not inviting anything in. Right. So that's right. That's the same way of that I approach my writing, and that if I never want this to happen, I cannot even talk about how I'm worried it'll happen. And I think that too, if you think about like ritual and manifestation and conjuring and being confrontational too, like I'm direct aggressive. I'm not passive aggressive. I'm direct aggressive. I've always been. Yes. Always been.
Love it.
Sometimes, like that's considered like, abrasive, bullying, all that typical shit that it's named. And I'm like, I just like to name a thing so that we can fucking find a solution for it.
Let's
and
get
isn't
to the
that
answer.
what my writing is? I'm constantly trying to find a solution to my madness or a comfortable chair to it. Same with like being a parent. I've been a parent for 30 years, right? I've been a parent for longer than I wasn't, without any blueprints. And what I could never do was call into any space how my dad responded to a thing, how my mother was during visitation. Like all of these things I just did not allow to even be shadows in the room with me and my children. Like I could just never do that. And so, you know, when I ask of fellow writers to take risks, it's never to get bloody. It's never to get so vulnerable and hurt yourself in the process. You know, I have a poem about smuggling a mermaid into my closet as a child and trying to demand her to teach me how to be more feminine, more ladylike. And the poem is called Tomboy. And it's to me the most honest poem, even though it's not true. And so I'm always asking, like, how can you be the most honest? And you don't even have to give us the truth, but how can you be honest? Obviously, I didn't steal a mythological creature. But to me, it was me naming my own misogyny, my own self-hate, how I grew up. I grew up amongst wolves. My natural inclination is kill. So how do you then, as a parent or just as a person in the world, learn how to nurture if you have never been nurtured? How do you love if you've never been loved kindly, softly, or truly? You know, it's huge. And so like, it's a huge undertaking. And for me to consider writing towards love and romance in that regard is really great for me, I think, because it scares me. So I know it's something I have to do.
Yes. Yes. I, as the co-founder of Generous Press, am so thrilled to hear you say that, because we are very much excited, and
I'm excited too.
Speaking about it. And one of the things that you just gave me, thank you, is another way to talk about this book of mine. That what you said, William just commented on this. To me, it's not the most honest poem, but it's the truth. Bish. Wow. So I have been saying this is a fictional love story. This is a fictional love story. I created 2 characters, and I wanted to imagine a love that could exist where both people could be whole and free, and also committed and sustained. And so I created a fictional love story, and I told it in verse, and I used I give myself an MFA in poetry, because I also am community taught and self-taught. And I had to work on this. This book took 9 fucking years. It started before my mom died. It took a big pause in grief.
Absolutely.
And it's interesting that it came out now, when like, I think I realized sometime in December that sometime last year around this time, the grief fog started to clear for the first time since my mid-30s. And I was like, oh my God, grief ate my 30s. And here I am, 42, with a child going into high school and a changing body. And
each time goth, I saw that post. That was so cute.
Oh my gosh, the beach goth.
Good. Oh my God.
It was amazing. I know. Oh my God. When he decides to go extra, he's going to go all the way extra. We got to get him and Clem together at some point.
Absolutely.
But
like, grief is love, right?
Grief is so love. It was like the reason why I needed to write this story. That's why it's a spell, because I wanted it to be true. I wanted to imagine something that I had never seen, never witnessed, never been given, and didn't know how to do. I didn't know how to do that, but I knew that I could believe in it if I could just see something where I said, that's what I want to be. And somewhere in the middle of it, I realized that it was me and me. It was like one side of me that wants to be free, and one side of me that wants to be committed and sustained. And like, and how do I reconcile that? So that's actually the work right now for me, is like, what does it mean to like maybe be here to be a different kind of being.
Absolutely.
Something that is.
That's the point, is to become different, is to change, is to morph, is to cocoon, is to, I mean, I think about my brother, to get free, had to die. Like, I think about it was, I mean, and then the whole entire house around him was like his cocoon, and like the stages, like he has never been safer and happier. Like, that's the thing I have to believe for myself. And like, yeah, so it's interesting the way you know, American culture doesn't have room for grief. But it's like all we have. Yeah. Like, so much of it is, you know,
literally swimming in it.
Our entire landscape, and we're just gonna be like, nothing to see here. You know, it's fine. It's all
just 1.5 million people just died in a very short span of time, but nobody's crying.
Right. Like, if you can't grieve, you cannot fucking love. You can't. Right. You can't do it. One feeds and assists the other in very powerful ways, and you can let it take the wheel, and it can drain you. It can siphon for a very long time, or you can be filled by grief in a way that is actually natural, and like I said, you know, the primal and important, and it can be a lighthouse. Like, my grief was a lighthouse. I would not have ended almost 16-year relationship had I not experienced such a catastrophically sized grief that required me to very quickly assess my entire life and recognize that it was not the life I should be having, I should be living. And it can, you know, and what's interesting too is like the love was gone for sure, but like there was comfort and habit, right? And you mix those up a lot. So it was important for me to realize, like, you're a habit. You're actually not a love. We're each other's habits. And I'm willing to actually break that cycle and say, this is no bueno. And, you know, so grief was that lens. And then I was accused of, oh, I'm grieving. I don't mean what I say. And I'm like, no, it's because I'm grieving. I mean what I say. So shit, like the witchcraft of that is important.
You stop bullshitting completely.
Exactly.
And there's no point in the lie.
Right. When the gut and the brain and the heart all end up in the same room and they're all like nodding in agreement, you're like, you have to go with that shit.
Exactly.
You cannot allow yourself to be driven by social norms or, you know, all of that other shit. And that, you know, and that too, like, as a queer person, like all my most formative relationships were with femmes, and they were all closeted. Like all of any long-term like queer relationships I was in, they were never out. I was sort of, it was like beaten out of me. Like I was out pretty young and I got beat up for it. So at that point it was like, what's the point in hiding anymore? Whereas they like were maintaining a very specific theater, right? And it required me to change or to adapt. And I think because, again, foster kid shit, I was able to do that, but I was so unhappy for so long. And like, I found myself in like back to back heteronormative relationships that were ridiculous. Like they were very ridiculous, but also they just felt like it was less work. It's less work to not be hunted, but then I'm like, oh, I've hunted I killed my own self.
Right.
My own head.
Yourself as a deer.
Yeah. I'm taxidermying my own self. Like took a long time to realize that I just couldn't have that anymore. But the writing too I think my writing is the most honest, right? And untruthful it's ever been, and I fucking love it. It's just so it's just has so many eyes, and it's like eating everything, and I love it. I need it to do that shit. It's excited. Really fucking sexual.
Well, you know, I love that. So I'm gonna be all right with that. I think that there's like There's something that in Blood you did for sure. Even in your earlier work, there's an excavating of the past in the naming and a calling out and like, this shall not stand. I was thinking about what you said of like being really careful to not put words to the things you don't want to happen.
Yes.
Man, when people come to me with that past, I just don't want to be the one who I'm like, then why are you saying it?
Right.
Like the quickest way to get there is by naming it. I think that what I'm excited about is that there's a future Rachel. There's a future Rachel that you're speaking to.
Ooh, I love that.
Your newer writing. I saw it in the poem about your daughter saying, I saw you change. That fucking shit. Oh my God. Didn't you post on like Mother's Day or something? It was the spring.
Was yeah, I mean that was in Poet's Dot. That was for Poem Day. But it came out right around I think Mother's Day or something. But it was me finally naming because we had, you know, it's not a divorce. We weren't even married, but like technically it felt like a divorce, but like we hadn't named it or made that public for months and months and months and months and months. And me putting that in a poem was a really huge, it was like the most vulnerable. Just having it stated plainly, like, hey, I came up to this moment and I approached my daughter and I told her, like, I'm done here. And her sort of mentoring me. I mean, it's called mentor. And she sort of became my guide in a way and was like, yeah, I remember when you were happy, Mom. And I have not known that person since. And I was like, and, you know, I think that, again, like we start believing our own characters, right? Like we start believing in the roles we play way too long. And I definitely didn't want my children to be children of divorce. I felt like it was such an important thing. And then I was like, oh, but instead they're prisoners of my sorrow.
Right.
Oops. Yeah. So no more of that. Now I masturbate every day.
Smoke weed every day. You know, like
it was crazy. I hadn't for 15 years.
Jesus.
I didn't have desire in me.
Isn't
that
wild.
crazy? Like I didn't, and I was a chronic masturbator. Like some of my writing in Blood talks about that. Like I could, once I learned pleasure, once I figured out I could be in charge of like feeling relaxed and good, I would not stop. I did it in church. I did it Sunday school, overnighters, sleepovers. Like I did it wherever I could. And then it stopped. So that it's back is really great. And that my writing, I think, is benefiting from that. More.
Everything benefits from pussy juice. It's just true. It's just facts.
Right.
I love that. I actually think that gives me, like I said, I'm excited for future Rachel, which is appearing in your writing now. You're like
future Amber too. Like, let's go.
Listen,
hang out.
I am so excited for future me because like what you said, I'm like, oh, that's what comes back when you finally like let go, when you name the thing. And when you move through the grief, which is going to take however fucking long it takes.
Yeah.
And, but the idea that at 47, you just kind of are like, I trust it. Exactly that. Yeah. I'm going to trust it. I will say the 40s have come with a lot of like, I don't know. It's just, we just going to roll with it.
Exactly. It's so great how, and I think like, even just, you know, 8 years ago, so many things had my hairs all standing up in my body and I was ready to fight. And now I'm just like, bitch, settle. That's your own shit. Like,
that's you.
The way I would like, fight for 1,000 people who I hardly knew and who definitely didn't give a fuck about me. It's like, you know, not that it's transactional, but I'm like, you know, I'm going to pick my battles in a way that's a lot more intentional and just safer for me on a spiritual level, literary level, like every level, like just chill, girl, just chill. So like, that's what I'm doing for myself. And I know that you're approaching that and you're going to get into it. And we're just going to become these like wise crone sea hag motherfuckers who, you know, are sexy and great
and satisfied. Because we can do it ourselves if we need to.
Absolutely.
I want to know, are you writing poetry as well? I know you're working on fiction right now as well.
I'm working on fiction. I had like this like crazy spurt of poetry that happened. I haven't revisited it since like February, but That's just because I'm like finally like settling in a way. And to be honest, like poetry was always a way. It was always a ladder. If I was stuck somewhere, I had to use poetry to get the fuck out. So it's always sort of been my fire escape. So now I have to like write. I'm madly in love right now. I'm madly comfortable, and I am a lot of things. So it's like to write from that space is going to be really interesting. But I think that too, that's why like the sexy is coming in a lot more. But I honestly too, like to have all of this, like to feel like I'm finally in a place for myself that is the most rewarding and potentially prolific, is also scary because comfort has never been comfortable. I've always been suspicious of comfort.
Right.
For many reasons. And I have this unfortunate side effect of my brother lying to me about being released from the hospital. He died of COVID, just alone in the house 2 weeks after our dad did. And he had told me that he had been released by the hospital. And then I found out later that it wasn't. So like now when people tell me a thing, I just don't believe it anymore. Like I need facts, I need proof, I need screen caps. Like I need to know everything. So I need to get out of that, because if I'm going to be in the land of make-believe, right?
Suspend your disbelief.
I have to, and I have to just like get over that particular trauma, because to me now, like words count so much more. I relied on his texts to give me the facts, the truth, and they weren't. So there's like a weird thing that's happening with me right there, but I'm going to get over that. I know I am. And I just have to push through the grief. And like you said, like, you know, I'm allowing it to be the weather. It's no longer though, like, it's no longer like driving the car. It could just be something that I have to turn the windshield on to swipe away or not. Yeah, I have, you know, immense love for my dead. I always have. And that's how I know how to take good care of the living, right? Like that's how you protect the living, is you respect the dead and you listen to them. So I'm always listening. And I think that my ancestors have done a remarkable job in guiding me in the last 3 years. I don't know how I'm alive still, but I'm grateful that I am. And that's a new thing for me to be able to say. It's taken a very long time for me to be comfortable in my body, and then also to be happy to be alive. So that's whoever cast that spell on me, I hope it never breaks. It's an important role for me.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Grateful to be
not
alive.
have ideation for the first time. I mean, I had my first attempt at 4 years old. So it's like to wake up without ideation is weird. And it's also beautiful and it's liberating. And it's
so
just,
there's tired and there's need to rest, and those are all signals that you can like respond to and do something about.
Absolutely.
This is a different level of like of presence, being here.
Yeah,
is to say that you like, wow, okay, I'm excited for present Rachel too.
me too, to be honest.
You are always gorgeous, of course, which, you know, as I've been writing about with me and my kid, I'm like, you know, it happened since a birth. You grew this face. It's not like you know, shaped and cultivated it, other than, you know, moisturizer helps, right? So,
absolutely.
But
lots of water.
You are, there's something that is shifting. I think about like how honored I was to be somebody who came into your life and got to have that intimate experience with you at Pink Door, and
you were so vocal too. I just want you to know, like, I've never forgot how beautiful that was, that you were just like naming what you thought was beautiful, and you were so grateful, but like also very present. Like, I think that was just really important. Not everyone is like that.
It's true. It's true. And thank you for seeing me. Thank you for that.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, I was grieving, and there was a little baby named Love.
Yeah.
And we were napping because I was older than most of the people who were there, and sometimes felt that way. And my knee was broken. I couldn't like go on the hikes and do the things. But I soaked. I remember soaking. I remember just the way that the workshops were challenging was a way I'd never seen before.
Sure.
The way that like in your gatherings of us, you just were so I don't know, it was steady. It was something that you could like lean back on and know was going to be there for you.
Thank you.
You really held space in a really beautiful way. And I would say like I said, I knew exactly who I wanted to talk to about conjuring. I knew exactly what I was trying to do with this book because I saw how intentionally you could do it. Like I saw that it was possible to manifest something. And you know, that good thing is like, is knowing your own power. I think knowing your own power and being intentional with it. And I think that you are a beautiful model of it. I'm really, really glad to know you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That makes me blush.
Yeah, good. Hey, I made a Capricorn blush. Ah.
No, that's not, yeah, no, we don't.
It's not common. It's not super common.
I'm just suddenly flushed. That's all.
Yeah, it's all right. It's all right. Bring the heat. I will. I would talk to you forever about this. I would really love to return the favor in some way, and I'm thinking of a way to offer you a gift, and I don't know what that is, other than to be able to promise the world that some romance fiction is coming from Rachel McKibbens by hook or by crook. We gonna get it.
Grandma, who told you?
You're like, how did you know? Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes, no, absolutely. Yes. Yeah, no, it's coming and I'm excited about it. And I think too, I've been writing love poems forever. They just were a little different, which is what, you know, you sniffed out and you were like, hey, you know, you're fucking psychotic lover. Like, how can we
it's hot. Every time you like, especially when you talk about your queer love, it's very, there was something there that was very, lack of a better word, fleshy. You know what I mean? Like it was tangible. It had weight to it.
It was formative, you know? And I think that even in hetero relationships, I'm a very queer lover still, if that makes any sense.
It makes total sense. I might have ended up with a baby the old-fashioned way, but
exactly right.
It was not a queer relationship, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely, you know. And I'm like, you know, if the only thing men are good for is me making children with them, cool. I'll just use that and move right along. But you know, it's been I think that you, especially just how you're moving in the world, is just really inspiring for a lot of folks who are still scared or who are still locked down. So
thank you.
You're freeing motherfuckers.
Listen, I ain't not scared, but I'm doing it anyway.
I know, and that's the thing. Like, it's just about being fucking brave and primal.
Yeah,
primal as fuck. I'm gonna keep saying that word because like that's
feral, primal. Like, fuck it. We're only here for so long. We don't know how long. We don't know. Tomorrow's not all the things. Like, fuck it. Do it now.
Yeah.
I mean, if not you, then who? If not now, then when?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad that you decided to name yourself out loud a witch and tell your business, following the Black femmes who modeled that for you, because you led the way for me to name myself as such, and I do proudly. I'm excited to see what you conjure up next, and to work with you on it, because I get to, and that's my great fortune. Also, I know Elena's gonna be bothering you about that short. So so
I was I'll
we'll talk business that business another time. But I'm so grateful. Thank you for coming on my virtual tour.
Thank you for
and being your wonderful self. I adore you too. I'm gonna bring back Roma to take us out. Thank you all for watching. Thank you, William, Karen. I see you in the chats. And thank you again, Rachel McKibbens.
You're very welcome.
What a wonderful hour conjuring up the magical musings and manifestations of Amber Flame and Rachel McKibbens. Thank you for sharing yourselves with us today. Keep a lookout for the next upcoming announcement for the next installment of the Apocrypha series through Open Books. Have courage, be kind, make smart choices. Until then.